Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Lara Barr, and as you know, I'm the owner and founder of Emerging Educational Consulting. We provide one-to-one mentorship for families from the beginning to the end of the application process. We wake up every day, we say we are committed to growing good humans, and what better way than to provide education and information. And today we are so lucky to have Liane Crane. She is our number one go-to when it comes to anything financial aid. She actually, we collaborate on a regular basis with our clients, with Liane. So I just really wanted the opportunity for you to hear from her these really crucial questions. And we have a series of questions that were sent to us ahead of time. So we're going to go ahead and ask those. But Liane, before we do that, will you just introduce yourself, the name of your business, and give us the scoop?
Sure. Thanks, Laura. Appreciate you having me on. I love to educate parents. I think instead of getting easier in the last few years, it's getting more complex, this affordability of college. So I've been in the college consulting world for, 15 years now. And since about 10 years ago, when the three of mine became looking for colleges, I've been focused solely on finances. I find it really interesting. I think it's really important to understand how to pay for college. So that's kind of my specialty in that area. And with three in college at the same time, I definitely had a lot of practice on doing the affordability piece. So I have my own company now, the College Dollar, and pretty much can help families. The sooner we start, the better. But I do get a lot of last minute. I have quite a few CSS profiles to do in the next 3 days before that number one deadline. So, with that, I kind of like, let me know what your questions are, and we'll try and educate your clientele.
Awesome. All right. The first one seems kind of obvious, but I think it's quite elusive. Like, what really is financial aid?
Yes, it does seem straightforward, but I can tell you that, if you're not in it every day, it maybe doesn't make sense. So financial aid is scholarships, grants, work study, and loans. So the total of those four things are what make up what you've probably heard as a financial aid package. And the amounts and types of those are determined by a Family Student Aid Index, or EFC, that were really most known till they changed it last year. So once you complete the FAFSA and all your financial information goes through that calculation, you will get a Student Aid Index. And that's how we can determine, even ahead of time, with good probability, how many scholarships, grants, work study, and loans you will be afforded at a school.
Can you talk a second about the difference between FAFSA and CSS Profile? What are the difference between those two? And the importance of deadlines. Talk about that real quick.
Yes. So FAFSA is accepted at most colleges. There's a very few handful of colleges that don't use the FAFSA. The rest of the schools use the FAFSA. And then there's those top tier colleges who use the CSS Profile. I call it the FAFSA on steroids. So it's a pretty financially invasive form. It wants to know really everything about your retirement, home equity, investments, real estate, businesses, valuations. So it's getting really down to that nitty gritty on, if we have money, should we give it to this family kind of thing. So there are high net worth families that we have conversations with all the time on if it makes sense to fill out or not. And I would say that if you don't know definitively, I would seek out an expert, myself or someone. I don't think it's as cut and dry as, this income should, this income shouldn't. There's a lot of reasons that maybe you want to, and a lot of reasons maybe you don't want to. But I think that's definitely an individual case by case on whether to fill those out or not. But if anyone is expecting some kind of financial aid or assistance with the cost of college, then you definitely need to fill out both forms. The deadlines of those, as you mentioned, very important. I have seen people lose scholarships by not understanding how deadlines on financial forms can affect admissions and receiving those scholarship money. So always very important to check those deadlines. And I don't think you should leave it to the student. I don't think you should leave it to your consultant. I really think as a parent, you're the one who's, most worried about the money. So definitely any school you think of maybe on your list, look really carefully when those deadlines are for scholarships.
let's talk about, well, and gosh, there's been so much in the news the past 2 years about FAFSA. How's it going this year? Last year, we were talking about the disaster and what to do. And right, like talk to us about how FAFSA is going.
So fingers crossed, seems to be going well. They did what they call a soft launch. So there's a handful of colleges and a handful of families were asked and requested to do it early. And so not quite as many glitches as last time. So that's the really good news. I will tell you, it opens December 1. So I am telling my clients to wait until the new year. I would wait at least 2 weeks if you can, just to make sure all those initial glitches are out. And there's all those people who have that fear that they will miss out if they don't do it in the first 24 hours, which isn't true. I know I have seen it where it says, oh, they run out of money. Honestly, I think the only one I've really ever heard of that happens is with California. You know, their state budget can run out of money first, but the federal government, I haven't ever seen that happen. And along with that, I just wanted to make sure that parents understand. So there is a deadline for the FAFSA from the school. So when they would like it, so that they can get you a financial aid package and your tuition bill is correct and all that. But the federal deadline to fill out the FAFSA, so this year's FAFSA 25-26 for incoming freshmen isn't due until June of 2026. So there's a whole year there. So if they happen to get to school, some things change, you decide they want their loans, you have almost honestly till they're home for the summer to complete the previous year's FAFSA. So just remember that.
And just let me interrupt you because I actually do have a bunch of people sending us stuff right now. They're like, oh my gosh, when is this deadline? So you're saying schools have deadlines. And in my world, typically it's ideal to meet the school's deadline. But for families who are applying right now for next year fall, the FAFSA is not even released until December
1, and then the federal deadline isn't until June of 2026. Now, your colleges are going to, most deadlines for regular admission is February, March of next year, 2025. But
so nobody's missed a deadline right now. We're good.
Correct.
Okay.
Doesn't open until December. I am recommending that you wait at least a week. If you can push yourself to 2, you can really push yourself to January 1, just to make sure those glitches. Because what happened last year is everybody rushed to fill it out as soon as it opened, and all these glitches come through, and they couldn't get out of the glitches. So people who actually waited were able to get it submitted, because once it was in the system and couldn't get out of the system to the college. So, and the other thing I want to make sure people understand is you're going to go on the college website and it's going to say the FAFSA deadline. It's not really the deadline for this year. Colleges just don't want to update their website. So it's always going to say, you know, October 1 due November 15th with the CSS, which isn't possible. So if you're doing a FAFSA only school and absolutely need that financial aid package to choose a school, definitely get in as soon as you can. If you've applied to a CSS Profile school or been accepted, you don't need to do the FAFSA immediately. Your financial aid package is based on the CSS. At that point, the FAFSA is really for loans.
So let me say it back to you, because I have a question here that says, do they need to fill out both forms, the FAFSA and the CSS, for what? The answer that you're saying right now is there are some schools that are FAFSA only schools, and there's some schools that are only CSS schools.
Well, CSS and FAFSA kind of go together, but your financial aid package is mostly determined by what you financially put on the CSS. Because it's that more invasive form and their formula is different, the amount of free money they're giving you is based on the CSS. So if you're hurrying to get the FAFSA in to see that financial aid package, there isn't quite a hurry as a FAFSA only school.
Right. And I think Hannah just put in our chat the colleges that require CSS Profile. Yep. So if you want to snag that and you can look at it later. She's also putting some other resources that Liane provided for us on the front side. So here's a question. When you say November 1st for the CSS, is November 1st, 2024 the deadline for CSS for a current high school senior heading to college this fall?
So November 1 is usually the first deadline for applications and early decision. So I've been doing mostly ED CSSs. Then I think the next one's November 15th. If you're doing regular decision, usually that's not until next year sometime. February,
so if
March.
someone is doing an early action or EA, their CSS profile should be completed by November 1st.
Yeah, I would check the website. I don't know. Every college is different, and every application, action, regular, whatever, is different. So I can't say there's a blanket answer to that question.
Yeah, I love that. I always laugh with us. We're like, isn't that our just most typical consulting?
No, we want to be like, here's the answer, but it's not. For CSS, check the website. The website is absolutely correct for CSS profiles. FAFSA, most colleges haven't changed it. So the date, I mean, it could say like November 30th and it's not even open. They're not changing their deadline. So check the school. And again, it depends if it's a FAFSA only school or a CSS profile school.
And so again, I think I have some families who are panicking right now because they are ED or EA. And what we're saying is that for fall entry of 2025, if the school requires CSS profile, we want to make sure you get that form in by November 1st.
Yeah, check the website. It will say.
Check the website in case, because it might not be the case. But
for CSS, it will be true. FAFSA might not, but CSS will absolutely, the date will be true. So check and see. A lot of early decisions are November 1.
Okay, perfect. That's perfect.
If anybody listening has a question, feel free to email me. Hannah, maybe you can put my email in there, and you can tell me the school.
Great.
We can work it out.
I think we're getting. If I have not answered one of your questions here, I want to make sure you feel like you can ask it again. I think the deadlines are, and the pressure's on right now, right, for all of these applications and everything else. We really try to work with our families to start, make sure their taxes are in order, to be prepared, right? Here's a question is, how do we access the CSS form?
So CSS is done through the College Board, and you will need your student's login. So there is not, unlike the FAFSA, the CSS does not have a parent login. You do not create an account for yourself. So you need to get your students login for that. Now, if for some reason they haven't taken the test or don't have a College Board login, you can make an account, but make it, again, the student's account. It will confuse everything if you make a parent account. The College Board is only student. You're filling out the information for them. So if they don't have an account, make a student account, log in, and then go through. I will say, if you own your own business or you have a divorce, you probably should be seeking out some help. They can get a little tricky on that CSS. It would be very surprising if people don't have questions on it. The CSS kind of makes it black and white. We try and find those gray areas to, benefit the student. So, always be truthful. Don't overestimate. Don't overshare, and don't be emotional. That was going to be what I see when I go through and review. I'm like, okay, let's back this up. Let's get to the truth here. And that's most of what parents do. They overestimate, overshare, and definitely are emotional when filling out the CSS.
Especially the week before.
Yes.
The week before. So I like that, because my next question really was, in general, thoughts about filling out the CSS profile, but maybe you just answered that question in a kind of fun way. Do you have anything to add to that?
One thing I would say that I think parents don't realize is once you submit the CSS, there are to-dos to do after that. So 2 things. Be sure I recommend my clients check the dashboard once a week, because right on that front page where the colleges are, it will list the additional information the colleges need. So all of them will require your tax return. So you're going to need to upload that into IDOC, which is IDOC, the portal for College Board, or some colleges will have you upload it directly to them. And the other thing is make sure you tell your student to check their email from anything from CSS Profile. So anytime something's required, they always email the kid. I can't say they always email the parent also. So to make sure your student knows that those emails will be coming on how to finish the CSS Profile.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. This is a question I ask you every year. And I think many of our families who are applying for next year may already know this, because hopefully I've done a great job teaching them. But for new families who are coming in maybe with sophomores or juniors, what this whole idea of financial aid and scholarships, I always have families be like, well, what can you do to get us scholarships? And I'm like, well, scholarships are tricky. I mean, a lot of the families, I'm so blessed to work with so many families, but a lot of the families I'm working with are not going to be qualifying for buckets of FAFSA money. They're going to be looking for merit money. So can you talk about merit? Like, what is merit aid? How do you maximize merit aid? And how does that fit in? I love this question. I'm going to let you answer it. I won't, but how does that fit in with what we call financial fit in building a college list?
Yes. So merit money is going to be the most money a student gets from college. So those outside scholarships, great to have. I would never turn down any money, but I think they average 3 to 7% of tuition costs. So again, you're balancing the time your student has with how much the scholarship is for. I think they say 2 to 3 scholarships a week if you're looking for outside scholarships. So that leaves trying to get that merit money. So there's a couple things you can do in your college search that I know you do, Laura, and consultants do. The first is, making sure you have those generous merit scholarship schools. Yes, there are definitely schools that offer more merit aid than others. So I know one college that they've actually increased it, but always gave $30,000 to every student that applied. And that's a big scholarship. Now, they couldn't lower their cost of attendance because their perception would be off that they're not a good school, because who's going to a $10,000 school or a $20,000 school, right? So by making it 60, now I think it's up to 70, and then giving every student 30,000, a little more affordable. So definitely look for those schools with generous merit aid. A little bit that can be concerned, location, major. So location, again, every student starts in that 4 to 6 radius or, across the US. And as we get closer to May 1st, everybody likes to be closer to home. But, colleges are trying to put those little push pins in every high school in the US. And if you're from that one school they don't have yet, they're definitely going to give you money. It's definitely a thing where they want diversity of location also. Major, again, not a slam dunk, but there are situations where chemistry majors could get more than biology majors. Those different majors, and then sometimes there's those very random majors in a college that they're proud of that just don't get a full seat. And if you're applying to that major, maybe they want to fill those seats and will give you money for that. So I can't say these will always work, but there are things definitely to consider. Demonstrated interest is always a one, because I know there's colleges that say we don't do demonstrated interest, but let's just use common sense. If I got my last handful of kids I'm trying to admit, and they're all identical, because that's why I haven't decided yet, is the kid who, reached out to the admissions counselor a couple times and went on the website 100 times, it's all an algorithm, and that will definitely go into it. So I think, if you're really interested in the school, you really should be researching it anyway, with that interest. Leveraging your talent. So maybe you don't want to be an athlete, but there's definitely times when, if you are an athlete or photography or some kind of club, special talent you have, that you could leverage possibly for some additional monies. And I know people don't like to hear this with the test optional, but honestly, test scores are still the best way to get merit aid. It just is. I mean, it's one way college that they can define how they give their money out. And this kind of falls in line with, if you're looking at schools and you have a test score and a GPA, if your student is in that, what the average, they say, niche and College Board, test scores between 1,200 and 1,350. If you're 1,360, you've just raised the level of that college, and they will sometimes, usually, most likely give you more money for that. So if you're going to a reach school, it doesn't mean you won't get money, but if you're the reach for them, it could definitely get you some money.
I'm going to stop you just for a second. This is great. I mean, I have one thing to say about the majors. That is a very frustrating factor for most college consultants because it's the hardest data to find.
Yes.
The way that sometimes my students have accessed that kind of information is building relationships with regional reps.
Yes, yes.
And so when students are talking to regional reps, they're saying things like, I'm interested in both biology and chemistry. What are your opinions? But it's just so much to ask of the student.
I know.
To be really doing this on top of everything else. So I have a great question. So how do families look up which schools give the best merit aid packages? I have an answer, but I'm going to let you answer first what you tell.
I hope you have a really good consultant.
I was just going to say, and I pay for my data. I pay for more.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. Unfortunately for parents, the most important information isn't readily accessible. So there are different websites. Sometimes I use Ohio State a lot because my son went there, so I'm very familiar with it to use as a reference. But right on their website, they will tell you their scholarships based on scores, which is amazing. Not all schools do that, but it is one thing to go through and look at all the scholarship sites. Honestly, ChatGPT is pretty good. If you search generous merit schools with engineering degrees, you're going to get, I would limit it to 5 in Denver kind of thing, and it might give you some. And of course, what they think is merit generous isn't what we think is merit generous. So use it as a grain of salt, but it will at least give you a place to start, understand where to search. Those College Board niche websites also, will give you some information on that.
I was going to say, and maybe Hannah, you can put this in. My company pays for more data set, and I think they're going to be opening a parent portal something. So people who work with us have access, and we're providing that data on the front end as we're building their college lists. But not everybody is working with us, and that's just great. That's fine. But we want to make sure we can get that information to as many people as possible, because as anybody building a college list, it's impossible for me to build a list without knowing what that family is going to be able to pay for, because the last thing I ever want is for a student to get into their dream school. I don't even like to say it, but get into one of the school of their choices. And then the parents are suddenly like, oh my gosh, that is not going to happen for you, my lovely daughter or son, or they, or whoever, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. And I just think it's a terrible thing. So in our breaks, we really try to mitigate those kind of conflicts on the front end. Let's see, what else do I have here? Let me see if I have anything else.
Okay, let me give one more FAFSA advice while you look. I just want to be sure. I would recommend to everyone to go to an SAI calculator. I think Hannah has a link for one, and run your SAI as truthful as you can, using the numbers that you will use for the FAFSA, to double check the FAFSA. So we're pretty sure the code is right, but using an SAI calculator that's not the government, and then double checking it with what SAI comes back when you complete the FAFSA. If there's a big discrepancy, you're probably going to want to reach out to someone, whether it's me or the school or someone, but that's a way to ensure that, FAFSA is doing what it's supposed to, and those glitches within the code of counting students' income, not counting it, that we had all last year. A good way to make sure is to have that SAI done so it makes sense with what the FAFSA says.
Great. We've been through this rodeo, you and I, for several years now, and sometimes people have ideas about this idea of negotiating with schools once they get their awards. And you and I will probably meet again when February, is that when we do that? February, we'll have our February check-in around this idea of negotiating. But can you just introduce, we have 5 minutes left.
Yep.
If anybody else has any questions, make sure you get them in now. But talk to us about this idea of negotiating.
Yes. So colleges really hate that word. So to be considerate of them and their non-transparency, we're going to say appeal. So basically what it comes down to is there a reason to appeal? So, I've done appeal letters for 15 years. That's actually the company I worked for before my own was based on. That's all we did were appeals. So we were very successful because back then it wasn't a thing. But it's still possible. I still do a couple a year. And I think the big thing is that people just think they can write to a college and say, can I have more money? And that doesn't usually work. There has to be a reason, a substantive reason. They're putting it under professional judgment. Why do you deserve more money? So there's usually, it has to be merit-based or finance-based. And I find that the things on the internet and the samples and stuff are okay, but it has to be, personal. You have to have a reason. You can't just take this template of, I want more money. I have to, is the financial aid formula really wrong? Does your SAI not match from the calculator to the FAFSA? Is there a reason you deserve more merit aid? And we go through that. So definitely reasons to do it. I just think it is a little more involved than kind of the free templates on Google.
Right. Let's see, I'm looking at the clock and I'm thinking,
well, all right, you think one more. So about appeals too, I want to tell people a couple things is you can do an appeal as soon as you get the financial aid package. So if you're doing early decision, which is binding, I have written appeal letters for that. Early action, as soon as you get that financial aid letter, there's you can write it right then, and there's reasons to do it quickly, and there's reasons to wait also, before May 1st. And the other thing is that check online with your college. Some require forms now, so you can't just email somebody at the college. There's an actual form and documentation you need to submit when you do this appeal. And secondly, always good to check. I know certain colleges that actually have appeal budgets. So if you appeal by this date for, good reasons, there's absolutely money there. And then after that date, they don't take any more appeals. So
that's great. That's great. That's a great tip. I have one last question and I'm probably going to push it. So let's see how fast you can answer it. You and I had a situation last year where we had a family who was like, I do not want to fill out the CSS profile. And she was very clear that she believed this gave her an advantage in an ED situation, an early decision situation, because she was making a statement to the school as not only am I ED, but I'm going to be full pay. And that one kind of stumped me, but it's one that I'm like, feel responsible to make sure, like, what's the scoop on that?
Yeah. So, that's only going to work if you make sure the Common App does not have the financial aid box checked. So it's kind of twofold. If you're putting, I want financial aid, then don't submit the CSS. You just totally confuse the college. Mm-hmm. So if you truly don't think or don't want any aid and aren't submitting the forms, don't check the box. Will it lend itself to the school taking the student? It could. I think that's a debate in our niche that goes round and round that, the counselors won't answer. Yeah, they can't submit all of their students at half price. That's, they're running a business. So they do need those full pays for those that they give, aid to. So I think it depends on a lot of factors, kind of what I said in the beginning, that each family situation is different. And there are certain things that would make me say, yes, you still need to fill it out. And there's some things that I'd say, yeah, you're right. There's no need to give all your financials to that college.
Yeah. Okay. We pretty much did it. I see a couple more questions coming through. And I think those of you who are asking questions who we didn't answer, we will try to give you the scoop. Or
can you email me? feel
Are
free to email me.
are you taking clients at the moment? If you're part of our practice, we use our retainer for your services. So if you're part of our community, maybe there's still time left, or have we missed the November 1st panic deadline?
Nope, I do have a few spots left, pretty much, but I just was doing one right before this, and she's going over an hour. I'm like, okay, we gotta go. I have more CSS to do. But yes,
Okay.
obviously, if you're Laura's client, I will fit you in. If you're not, then yes, please email me, and I'll see what we can work out. Maybe I can just review it instead of do it with you.
Great, Liane.
Before you submit, and if you're going to do that, please email me before you even open the form. Very important.
Okay, before you open the form.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you with my whole heart. We're so grateful for you, and I can't wait to see you next time.